Today, I want to talk about 5 things that don't matter for record labels. Now, of course, there's exceptions to the rules, and I may be speaking a little hyperbolically here, and there's just some overall principles, and some of these things might work for you really well. Some of these things you might want to adopt or change what you're doing. Overall, these episodes are meant to just be thought-provoking and inspiring and help you reconsider what you're doing. Maybe there's things that you're wasting too much time on that aren't producing results. And so we want to evaluate those things. I've said it a million times. Success is made up of hundreds and thousands of decisions of what not to do, what to stop doing, what to keep doing more of, what to do later. So I want to focus on 5 things that I see record labels focus too heavily on when I don't think they really should be. Number 1, vanity metrics. Okay, what's vanity metrics? Let me read you a definition here. Vanity metrics are superficial measures that give the illusion of progress without providing meaningful insights. Examples of these metrics looks like likes, shares, followers on social media. While they may look impressive on the surface, they don't necessarily translate to business success or bottom line impact. Now, not every graph on your analytics, if you're looking on your social media analytics or your website analytics, not every chart is a vanity metric. Some of these charts are more explicitly connected to growth or revenue, and that's good. Instead, I'm talking about dopamine metrics. You know what I mean? You know, the ones that you're always scrolling and refreshing to try to get another hit? There's 2 reasons why vanity metrics are a problem for record labels. Number 1 is they're a distraction. Small businesses should not get caught up in these numbers as they often distract from more meaningful tasks. You'll hear this refrain a lot in this entire video. Things that are shiny and traditional and come with peer pressure, like vanity metrics, they end up distracting you from doing things that matter, things that bring revenue in, things that make a difference. And oftentimes we get distracted because they're kind of easy and they give us that dopamine hit. The other negative side of vanity metrics is that they create this false sense of success. And on the other side, they create a false sense of failure. Another way to put it is they create a false sense of productivity in that you spend the morning sending out all these tweets and posting these messages, and you're getting likes and maybe a few new followers. But is that really impacting our bottom line? And if it's not, then we're getting this false sense of productivity that we actually moved the needle today. We have a course that I've talked about this called Income Generating Activities. It's a micro course. It's in our big bundle. And I talk a lot about like focusing on things that actually generate income. On the other side of the coin, though, they also it tricks us into thinking that we're not having a connection with our fans because we don't get the likes and we don't get the followers, when in reality, our followers, the people who are really meaningful, are listening to us on the radio or streaming us on Spotify or who are coming to see us at shows. They may not care about us on social media, and social media is changing rapidly. So I'm now even scrolling past all of my friends' stuff and I like it, but I don't actually physically touch the button. I'm just like, oh, cool. Oh, cool. And so like a lot of these vanity metrics are meaningless. The solution with vanity metrics is not to give them any weight either way. Don't put your hopes in them, but then also don't let them trick you into thinking that you failed. The objective of social media, and we'll do an episode on social media one day, but the objective of social media is just to come in, say hello, use it as one of the multiple touch points that you have with your audience, and then take off. Number 2 is name dropping. I don't really see this very much anymore, which is great. You do see it in the recording space. I remember I was talking to a guy one time, and he was telling me that he was getting his new album mastered by a guy who mastered all these other really great indie rock records. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, that's really cool. But then I realized that's just like a name drop. Like, that's not going to impact the quality of his project, or certainly not going to make his project like the melodies any better, or you know what I mean? And like no fan is going to listen to that and going, oh, I recognize that famous guy's leveling technique. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, we realized that name dropping is kind of pointless in that way. We also do it when we say like, this microphone was used to record the Beatles, and now I'm recording my record from it. And it's like, oh, and we draw this some sort of imaginary connection. In fact, today you can actually get your music mastered. If you pay enough money, you can get your music mastered at Abbey Road. Just so in the liner notes, it says mastered at Abbey Road. Let me clarify for a second. I like name dropping. I do name dropping. There is a place and a time for name dropping. When you're trying to work with someone and you guys have a mutual friend, or if you've worked with some big names and you now want to work with this other big name, you can drop those big names to say, hey, listen, these people trust me. So it now gives you reason why you should trust me. So there is a place for name dropping. There's also the act of like having another artist be listed on your song on Spotify, like as a featured artist, so that you can share monthly listeners between them. I get that. That's a big deal. Even liner notes, it's cool when people say, oh, that drummer that I really love from another band is on this album. That's kind of not what I'm talking about. There's two problems with name dropping. Number one, it can be kind of tacky. And so when people name drop to me out of context and without some clear way of connecting, I'm realizing, are you compensating for something? Are you using this name drop because you're just not confident in the art that you've created? So be careful with that. It almost comes off like a bait and switch. It's like, look over here. We have this cool artist who helped master or met with us in a coffee shop. Oh, and by the way, the music's crap. And number two is to avoid paying for name dropping. There is a lot of, I don't want to get into it, but there's a lot of people out there who've worked with other people at some point in their career and will charge you a lot of money for them to coach you on your music or to listen to your mixes or to mix your record for you or master your record for you. And they use their previous credibility as a way to jack up the prices and to make money from people. I'm not critiquing that industry right now. There's some people who do it extremely fairly, and there are people where it's a little bit more sinister, but I'm just imploring to you to be wise with spending your money. Don't think, hey, if I pay this guy who has also worked with XYZ to work on my record, then I can use that and we'll then follow that trajectory of success that the other artist did. That's not going to happen. So just be careful with name dropping. Instead of name dropping, when you're writing your press pitch, name drop yourself. Name drop your own experiences. Name drop for you as a record label, the artists that you're working with and why you are a fan of them. That's the most authentic type of name dropping. Number three, thing that I don't think matters is registering your business and going legit. Okay, now hold on. Before you start typing comments and everything, let me clarify what I mean by this. And let me explain why, because I do think this is very important. And by the way, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. So do not take advice from me. I'm just a goofy musician. I will say this. I hear from people all the time and they email me and say, I want to start a record label. The first thing I did was I registered the domain. I registered my business and I'm now registering for a trademark. And then they want to know what's next. And there's an element of readiness that I really respect. And I like when people hold themselves to the fire. I think when you spend money on registering your business, you then are forced to hold yourself accountable. I respect that. Here's my issue with people who register everything too quickly on day one. Number one is every trademark company and every lawyer and accountant will gladly take your money. They'll handhold you through the process. You can call your government agency and everybody is willing to help you register a business. But none of those people will really look into the viability of your business. Now, if you're getting a business loan from a bank, maybe they will. But for anybody who's just going to help you get registered and sign up a name and buy a domain name, GoDaddy isn't going to say, are you sure you should be starting a record label? So that's my concern, is that everyone's going to be really helpful and excited and handhold you through this process of registering, but nobody's really going to check if you have a sound business idea and a sound strategy for how you're going to make money. I mean, that's not their job. I get that. You're the only one who's in the driver's seat right now who can put the brakes on. Number two is I think that registering your business and doing all of that business side, which let's be honest, it's quite easy, right? You just Google it, you get a lawyer, you can pay somebody to do the whole process for you. The domain name and the trademark can all be filed online. It's kind of an easy process that makes you feel like you're being productive. But the reason why I'm against it is because I think it's a distraction from some of the harder questions, which are, what is our niche? What value are we bringing to this marketplace? Who's our customer avatar? What's our unfair advantage that we talked about in a previous episode a couple weeks ago? What leg up do I have in this industry? What will we provide listeners that they can't get anywhere else? What will we stand for that will attract people to us? To me, these are all the big questions that you should be asking before starting a record label. This is the stuff that will make or break you. Not a domain name, not a business license from your state or your country, not a lawyer or an accountant. It's asking the really tough positioning questions, figuring out the why. How is easy. How is always easy. There's plenty of people who will take your money to get you figuring out the how. It's the why. The why is really difficult. Okay, that's all I'll say on that. I'm not against registering your business. I really am not. I just want you to make sure that it's not being a distraction from the really hard questions. Number 4, press coverage. This is a complicated one, so let me summarize it with this. What I think is most important for your record label, for any business, is for you to reverse engineer where your income comes from. So we might think, oh, I want to get my records reviewed on Pitchfork or in Rolling Stone or by that needle drop guy. And those are fine aspirations. Maybe your aspirations are even more traditional. I want to have records in record stores and I want to hear my music on the radio. Look at where your income is coming from and reverse engineer. How did it get there? Is it coming from streaming? Is it friends and family who are listening to it on streaming? Once we find out who the people are and where they're buying from us or listening to us, that is the reverse engineer process. And so don't dream about some sort of big press coverage if you don't actually have a plan for how that investment or that opportunity is going to bring you revenue. You can't just hope that a pitch here and coverage here is going to draw people to our event or to our page. It's actually easier if you find out where the money is coming from right now and then reverse engineer to how you got that in the first place. I was talking to a record label just recently who has started act as a retailer on their website and selling other record labels records and some foreign imports and not just their own releases, and things are going really, really well that he just kind of has to focus on doing that right now because it's being so successful for him. And this is a case of just like following the money. Press right now would be, I mean, yeah, should he, if he had unlimited resources, should he be pitching these records to the press and trying to get press coverage? Yeah, but right now, all of the focus is on his web store. People are coming to from all over the world to buy these cool records. So that's where his focus is. So does press coverage matter? I guess it does if you can show me how past press coverage or any press coverage leads down to revenue and sustainability for your record label. My point of this and my point of the whole video is don't assume that traditional ways of getting attention is where you should be putting your attention. Don't assume that the traditional ways of getting attention is where you should be putting your attention. When I had music coming out, I would always do the same press releases to all the same blogs and curators and magazine writers and journalists and everybody, newspapers. I got to a place where I looked at the revenue that was coming in on a monthly basis long after the album had been released, and 80% of it was coming from Spotify playlists. Now, I know that's not the same for all of you, and that might change for me one day, and that's not to say that I don't love the vinyl sales on Bandcamp or the in-person sales or whatever. But I'm realizing that the bulk of it is coming from Spotify playlists, which were specifically user-generated playlists. So that means that when I'm coming out with a new single or a new album, if I know that 80% of my revenue is going to come from these playlists, I should be focusing at least 80% of my efforts, my promotional efforts, to contact and find approachable curators that are in genre-relevant playlists for me and pitch my songs to them. Because I found that not only pitching to these user-generated playlists were successful, but then Spotify, the major curators, started watching some of these up-and-coming playlists as their like cultural feeders. And so I realized that if I could just get on a handful of these playlists, that would make up about 80% of my monthly revenue for a new release. In a perfect world with unlimited resources, I would do it all. If I had unlimited people in my office, I would be pitching to every newspaper in America, every college radio station in North America. I'd pitch to record stores all over the world. I'd pitch to curators and influencers. I'd do it all. But when you're a one-person operation or even a two-person operation, you have to be choosy. And finally, number 5, this will be the most controversial, quality. I think the 5th thing that doesn't matter for record labels is quality. Now, hear me out. I just recorded an episode. You'll hear it in a couple of weeks. And we were talking about the difference between quality and quantity as a record label. What is more important? In our culture today, as at the time of recording this, there's this constant demand for infinite content on social media. If you have both quality and quantity, that's great. But social media right now actually just prefers quantity. But that's not why I think that quantity is more important than quality. Let me explain. I think it's more important for 2 reasons. Number 1, quality means that your artists And you as a record label are being prolific. And if you're being prolific, it means you're working, which means you're not being distracted, which means you're being a creator, which means you're making things. If you've ever read the book, The War of Art, and I suggest you do, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you're probably, if you're a prolific artist, if you're always releasing stuff and not letting anything get in your way, then you've probably already read that book. But to me, when I see an artist who releases a lot of material, all types of stuff, I respect that artist. Can you call yourself a songwriter if you haven't written a song this month? Can you call yourself a songwriter if you haven't written a song this week? And number two is that quality can't exist without quantity. You have to produce and set new bars and new personal bests. Perfection is the enemy of progress. So you have to keep going and going and trying and trying and trying. I think quality is thought of too highly. It's quantity that's more important, because quality is the natural byproduct of quantity. Ask a gym trainer, what's more important, big muscles or doing reps? I know there's been a lot in this episode, and as always, I'll put the notes together in a link in the description below on our website, and it'll be in our weekly newsletter as well. These episodes are meant to give you like just some big picture thoughts, and of the 5 topics, let's go back over them real quick for you here. Of the 5 topics, it is vanity metrics, name dropping, registering your business, press coverage, and quality. Of these big picture topics, and I kind of went into point form on a few of them, and I'll put that in the notes. I think you might be able to find like 1 or 2 things that really hits home for you, and you might want to ignore some of the things that don't apply to you, or maybe all of this applies to you, or maybe none of it applies to you. But that's the kind of the beauty of these episodes, is take what inspires you and what, hopefully changes your thinking and gives you a different outlook on the word quality, or a different outlook on what it means to get press coverage, or should I register my business before I figure out the why behind why I'm starting a record label? The goal is for you to get closer to doing what energizes you the most, and to do less of what saps that energy from you. Let me know down in the comments if you found this helpful. If there are things, traditional things in the record label business that don't matter to you, what from this list do you agree doesn't matter? Thanks for watching, and please subscribe, and come on over to our website for some more resources for record labels.